Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like.
In the quiet, dimly lit room, shadows danced unsettlingly on the walls as she sat hunched over the paperwork, heart racing with every moment. The haunting echoes of betrayal lingered in her mind, whispering reminders of the man who had shattered her family, and with it, the love that had once thrived. It was more than a house. It was a fortress of memories, and now it held something more sinister, an abyss crafted by deceit and manipulation. This was power. It was cold. It was intoxicating. And she would soon wield it. At 34, she had weathered storms that would drown most. The loss of her mother, a vibrant soul now reduced to a fading memory of laughter and comfort, left scars that would never quite heal. But at least she had fought for justice. She had fought against her ex-stepfather, L, who had gleefully dug his nails into her mother's suffering. They had married when her mother was only 40, seemingly an act of love, but his true nature soon unveiled itself. A monster lurking beneath a charming guise. "I won't let you die. I promise, Mom," she fervently whispered to the past, clutching the brittle medical notes as if they were talismans against the darkness. Each word morphed into a prayer on her lips, a vow that fueled her unchecked rage. L, that tyrant disguised as kin, had wreaked havoc on their lives, sabotaging her mother's treatments as if joy itself were a privilege he would never allow them to keep. The day her mother came home from the doctor's office had been etched in her mind, trapped in the vortex of desperation and fear, the confrontation with L still reverberating through her veins. It had been a day of hope turned sour. The mere mention of cancer had triggered L's explosive wrath, shaking her mother's world more than the diagnosis itself. "Your wife won't be doing shit," he had bellowed, storming out of the room without a care for the consequences of his verbal tirade. How dare he snuff out her mother's light so cruelly? Despicable, his very presence was venom. And yet, here she was, driven by the irony of their situation, as she remembered his laughter when they first confronted him about the abuse. "What can a woman possibly do to me?" he had scoffed, a smug smirk dancing on his lips. That mocking tone melded into a challenge, a taunt that ignited a fire within her. It was a catalyst. It turned her grief into purpose. The cracks in the facade of their lives widened as Lee's madness spiraled. He thrashed against reason and reality in his delusion of control. He drained her mother's bank accounts, cutting off even the basic necessities, relegating her mother from a strong woman to an invalid reliant on kindness. And when kindness faltered, she moved in with them into the basement of a house that once held warmth, but now reeked of desperation and despair. The nights they spent together, secretive talk snuck between bouts of her mother's illness, fortified a bond that transcended mere blood. They had shielded each other from L's rage, shared whispers of survival, strategies for battling the inevitable morass of deceit that encompassed them. "I can't let him take you away from me," she had said, her voice steady despite the dread queuing in her throat. "If he keeps this up, I'll make him pay. I'll ensure he's held responsible." Her heart pulsed in harmony with her determination. She would be the storm ready to destroy the walls L had erected to protect himself from the truth. L's invasion into her life ignited an urgency to equip herself. She shifted her studies to criminal law, taking every detail of the legal system and inscribing them into the marrow of her bones. In the shadow of torment, she transformed into an agent of retribution. Months whizzed past, anxiety-laden, peppered with moments of both tenderness and terror. She captured evidence through hidden cameras, rendering L aware but undeterred. The arrogance of living unscathed fueled his delusions. If ignorance was bliss, he was the happiest man alive. "He's only digging his grave deeper," she told herself, each revelation growing ever more satisfying. The day of reckoning arrived, a summons delivered through her lawyer with finality. L didn't show. His absence nearly mocked their resilience, yet the courtroom became their sanctuary. Just moments before the judge's decree, L had been offered a lifeline, a chance to sign the papers and relinquish his toxic grip on her mother's future. But no, he wouldn't budge. The laughter that left his lips echoed throughout that hall, resounding against the walls like a death knell. "I'll wait for her to die. I'll take everything." He had spat with cold certainty, sealing his fate. The gavel struck, and with it came the promise of freedom. Sole possession of the home was awarded to her mother, a sliver of victory carved from chaos. Elle was evicted that very night. The smell of his dark presence immured in the air like a stench of rot. In their sanctuary, months rolled on. Transferring her mother to the assistance of Osf, the wheels of treatment began to turn. Elle was stripped of control, shackled by the law. The humor of it all morphed into something sinister. The game had just begun. A blood feud brewed, wrapped in the skin of care and compassion. Yet beneath the shadow of newfound clarity lay the darkest of threats. Lel's refusal to acknowledge reality, to substantiate his threats, morphed him into something beyond human. He was now a specter, looming in a cold war against his past. Was he simply waiting for the death knell of his own design? When her mother succumbed to the cancer, it wasn't just a life loss, but a mother wrapped in betrayal, inciting a firestorm of vengeance. 15 years ago, I would have never thought I'd end up here, she murmured to herself, staring into the unforgiving void of that basement apartment. The memories of Elle's treachery twisted her heart into knots. Rage churned relentlessly within her. They'd confided in each other, painted dreams of escape, of how Elle's threadbare hold over their lives would end as soon as her mother had completed treatment. The ultimate betrayal unfolded like a dark tapestry. The final thread pricked her deepest wounds, tearing into the fabric of intention. Elle had watched with glee as every attempt unraveled. The cancer cells were not the only invaders in her mother's life. A malevolent force had conspired to cut her mother's safety. The confrontation inevitable, she could no longer linger in the fog of uncertainty. It was time to finalize their tragic narrative as a tragic hero, with the burden of her mother's pain concealing itself under the guise of compassion. The declaration of betrayal was inscribed in ink. Only Elle could read the irony dripped from each calculated word. The house, once a symbol of familial love, represented the final boundary between her and Elle. In those walls, she would face him one last time. And when the dust settled, Elle would know, deep down in the marrow of his existence, that not a single thread would remain untangled. Every strand would be pulled taut until it snapped. Every debt owed would become a testament to his failure. Elle had ignited a wildfire, and she would watch it consume him whole. As the shadows lengthened, she thought of her mother, lost giving birth to a new resolve. With every moment that passed, the revenge plan solidified each memory of Elle's indifference, a blade sharpening against the whetstone of time. The darkness had awakened, and she was ready to unleash it upon him like a thunderstorm in the midst of a calm night. His final judgment awaited, and she would be the architect of his demise. The storm was swirling, and revenge was just on the horizon. The moment was finally upon her, like the stillness before a tempest. The weight of grief tethered to the anger surging through her veins felt like a cauldron on the verge of boiling over. The memories of betrayal clung to her mind, urging her toward the denouement of this dark tale. With every beat of her heart, she envisioned Lel's face, twisted in disbelief, a reflection of his own mate. He had underestimated her power. He had dug his own grave, believing he could stand in the shadows and enjoy the ruin he inflicted without consequence. A week had passed since her mother was laid to rest, the finality of that day clawing at her heart. The threads of purpose began to weave together, sharpening her focus. She had created the perfect plan, a revenge scheme that was intricately designed, with every detail plotted like the steps of a meticulous chess game. It was more than mere vengeance. It was justice, a reckoning long overdue. Everything he thought was out of his reach would now return to haunt him. After her mother's death, rumors circulated about Elle's sudden disappearance, rumors that reached her like whispers in a darkened room. Mexico, they said, somewhere warm and sunny, where the sun could wash away all his sins. How predictable he was, thinking escape would shield him from accountability. She was determined to hunt him down. She hadn't come this far just to let him vanish. And so, she began her meticulous preparations, following the trail of his prior life while meticulously masking her own intentions. With the financial support from her mother's life insurance, she hired a private investigator. His name was Frank, a grizzled veteran with a penchant for uncovering truths, no matter how deeply buried. As they sat together, poring over Lee's history, she felt invigorated. "He's left a trail wide enough to follow," Frank said, a glint of respect in his eyes. "He might think he's gone, but every debt and every bad decision is still tethered to. It'll take time, but we'll find him." "Time is a luxury I can't afford," she replied, her voice low but edged with resolve. "I need him to pay. I need to show everyone what happens when you think you're above consequence. This is personal." Frank met her gaze, sensing the unwavering intensity swimming within her eyes. As if sensing the gravity of her words, he nodded. "I won't waste a moment." Days turned into weeks, but with each passing moment, the cracks in Elle's facade unraveled further under their scrutiny. Each lead was like a drip of blood upon the pavement, inevitable, undeniable. Elle was a creature of poor choices, leaving a wake of failed relationships and shady dealings. His arrogance had bred a delusional belief in his invulnerability. When Frank finally tracked down Elle's whereabouts, she could hardly contain herself. He had settled in a coastal town, one ripe with tourists, but layered with corruption beneath the sun-kissed exterior. Without hesitation, she made plans to confront him. She arrived in the small town under the guise of an unsuspecting visitor, donning a casual outfit and guarded demeanor, her heart pounding in her chest. The sun hung low on the horizon as she approached the dingy bar where Elle had taken refuge. The cheerful music and laughter felt starkly out of place against her brooding energy. Her pulse quickened as she spotted him, seated at the bar, his back turned, an inconspicuous silhouette lost amidst his surroundings. "Elle!" she called out, her voice like a cold breeze slicing through the warmth of the atmosphere. He turned slowly, the smirk peeling from his face as his eyes widened in realization. "What the hell are you doing here? Do you really think you could disappear and not pay for what you've done?" She stepped closer, her confidence swelling like an unstoppable tide. He stood abruptly, attempting to regain composure. "You shouldn't be here. You're out of your depth." His tone had shifted from shock to bravado, but she vowed to shatter that veneer. "Out of my depth? You're the coward who ran to hide from consequences. You thought you could wait for my mother to die and claim your prize." Her anger flowed freely, each word delivered with a blade-like precision. "We'll see about that," he sneered, trying to re-establish dominance. But the intensity in her gaze paralyzed him. She was no longer the scared woman he once mistreated. She had evolved, molded by fire and fury. "Do you really think those courts would protect you forever? I took everything from you. All your freedom, your money, and soon your dignity. What are you talking about? You think you can just waltz in here and threaten me?" His bravado trembled at the edges, fear creeping in like shadows. "I'm not threatening you. I'm coming for you," she leaned in, words dripping with venom. "And trust me, I have all the paperwork, all the evidence. When I'm done with you, you'll wish you hadn't underestimated me." He recoiled, feelings of invincibility shattering like glass under pressure as she unleashed the gravity of her revenge. "You're a nobody, just some woman who played house with her sick mother, and in the end, it got her nowhere. Watch me." The light in her eyes flickered with fierce resolve. "You think your life is free of consequences? I'll make sure you feel every ounce of betrayal, just as I did when I lost my mother. You'll be more than just a name. You'll be a walking monument to your failures." The lingering silence cracked, revealing the drama of their confrontation laid bare. Elle faltered, reeling from the realization that the tables had flipped. The man who believed himself untouchable was now a target, and with each moment she pulled back on the bowstring. "We'll see how far you can run," but I promise my shadow will linger behind you, guiding me to your reckoning. And once I've finished with you, you'll be beaten, bruised, and stripped of every illusion that grants you comfort. Get out." There was an edge of panic creeping into his voice, the bravado replaced by trepidation. "Oh, no, my time isn't up yet," she replied sweetly. "But rest assured, I will savor every moment of your downfall." Stepping away, she could feel the intensity of the moment swell. Electrifying. The sweet satisfaction resonated within her as she turned to leave, feeling invulnerable and unyielding amidst the chaos she had unleashed. Outside, the sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving traces of orange break down the slices of night. As she stepped into the shadows, she realized the thrill of revenge felt like freedom, liberating her from the chains of loss and betrayal. Back in her rented space, she connected all the dots, the evidence, the hidden betrayals, and Elle's eventual disintegration. She made arrangements to file the necessary claims against him as the final devouring of his existence largely continued like an unending nightmare woven into her reality. He wouldn't just lose material wealth. She aimed to humiliate him at every turn until he lay desolate, wondering how he crossed paths with a woman hell-bent on obliteration. Weeks entangled into months, and she pressed on, determined to expose Elle's reckless past as it unraveled before the eyes of witnesses and legal eyes alike. Her relentless pursuit of revenge enveloped her existence, transforming every inch of her soul into a weapon of calculated destruction. The planning deepened, the anticipation mounting magnificently. Her final confrontation smoldered forth on her horizon. The day Elle was to be brought to court arrived, a culmination of her meticulous plotting, the final knockout to expose his transgressions. The weighty air in the courtroom stretched with tension, every whisper an echo of her resolve. And as Elle stepped into the dock, his face draining of color, she held his gaze firmly, reminding him of the roots from which this reckoning stemmed. "Ready to face the music," she taunted, leaning into her power. "What is this supposed to be?" "You think you've won," he spat, still holding on to remnants of bravado, though it hung by a thread. "I didn't just win. Elle, I've constructed your heartfelt demise." Every word was serrated, each syllable cutting deeper than any wound he had ever inflicted, not just on her, but on her mother's legacy. "Welcome to the end of your illusions. This is where your laughter dies." She turned as the evidence unfolded, a parade of the familiar memories that led her from despair to vindication. The testimony of the witnesses, the audio recordings, and the veracity dripped from every word, laced with her resolve to dismantle Elle piece by piece. It didn't take long before the judge ruled in her favor, and amid the staining silence, a powerful blow drew a gasp from everyone present. Elle's composure shattered. He stood exposed, wretched, as the reality settled upon him like a storm cloud heavy with rain. There would be no safety. The consequences of his actions unfurled around him with iron chains. As Elle was led away, she felt it wash over her like the first rays of dawn. After a dark night, a rush of freedom, mingled with delicious revenge. When a woman cries, it's not a weakness, it's proof of her strength. Her voice met the thrumming silence, and just as the edges of this fierce victory danced within reach, she savored the laughter of fortune as she whispered, "You should have known better than to underestimate me, Elle. I'm not just a woman, I'm the storm, and this is your reckoning." Her triumph was complete. Elle had lost everything, and now she would ensure every shadow in his life served as a constant reminder of his choices. The echoes of the courtroom faded into the night air, the sense of betrayal melding with vindication as she stepped into the next chapter, untethered, mighty, and finally free.
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like.